What is going on, YouTube people? Northeast Ohio Cards and Comics here. Today for some 2022 predictions for sports cards and a little bit of comic books and Marvel trading cards. A little bit of everything today. I was hoping to get this out last week, but with all of the stuff that went down last week, plus the holidays and everything else, just didn't happen. Had to push it into the first week of 2022, but that's okay. At least I'll have it documented, and at least we can all make fun of how wrong I was come 1 year from today. So, like, comment, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff down below, and let's go ahead and dive into some predictions for 2022. Let's start with the market, just kind of generally speaking on the sports card side of things. So, obviously, the beginning of this year, prices went crazy. Everything got super high. Everything has crashed back. Not everything, but a large majority of stuff has crashed / returned to where it was in the early, COVID bubble days. Some stuff has maintained value, as we have discussed on the channel. Some stuff's gone down. The modern NBA market continues to be a rocky place to play in. NFL, not much stuff is really up since the season started. But I do feel as we get further and further away from February and March of 2021 and separate ourselves, if you will, from those extremely high prices that we all saw. And as people cycle through cards more and people cycle in and out of the hobby more, that becomes further in the rearview mirror and we could get back to a normal baseline. I think the beginning part of this year, we begin to see a more normalized baseline. The stuff has come down quite a bit. I do think it still has some room to come down, some stuff. But I think once we kind of get through this and level out, and I think we will in the first part of this year, things will get back to a more normal, semi-cyclical nature. I don't know that you are always going to see the same patterns of like buy in the off season, sell before the season starts, all that stuff. I think that stuff might still be a little wonky, but in general, the further that we get away from the massive spike the beginning part of 2021, I think the better off that we will be. And I feel like we're at that point where things are going to start to level out and then, just kind of vibe with whatever's going on in the world and the market and be a little less swingy, if you will. On the flip side of that, while I don't think we're going to see massive price corrections like we have been seeing, I think those will continue for a little bit to start the year and things will begin to hit their floors. I also don't think we're going to see massive price swings on the upside either. A player's really going to have to do something to break out. Someone's going to have to come from out of nowhere. Long are the days of a 20-point half or a 20-point quarter in the NBA causes your prices to soar. It's going to be a much more well thought out and patient market. I've discussed a lot recently to kind of close out this year. I'm still looking at a lot of sports cards, but I am being a lot more picky about what I am buying. I'm being a lot more choosy. I'm being a lot more targeted. Whereas, earlier in 2021 and late 2020, it was just buy it all because it's all going to go up. That's not the case anymore. So I do think the market begins to kind of normalize, level itself out here in the first part of this year. That being said, my other big prediction for this upcoming year is that raw to grade comes back in a big way. Now, you've been able to raw to grade this past year, but it's been on a more narrow basis of cards because of the high points of entry for grading. For PSA, BGS is kind of non-existent. And SGC, while very viable for mid and low end stuff, still, in my opinion, does not make sense for a lot higher end stuff. CSG is still trying to figure out their way in this world, and then there's all the pop-up grading companies. But I do think as PSA lowers prices, that puts more downward pressure on the entire grading industry to also lower their prices. Because as PSA gets cheaper, more cards are going to funnel their way, which means there's less demand for the other grading companies, which means they're going to need lower prices to be able to entice people to get cards through the door, for them to be able to grade them, get that revenue, get those orders to turn them around and get them back to you. So as grading gets cheaper, I feel like that brings raw to grade back in play for more people. Now, it's not the easiest thing to do. You have to have, there's definitely a skill set for it of picking the right cards, evaluating them correctly, having faith in your evaluations, and then taking the risk to grade them, factoring in the turnaround times, what the secondary market's going to look like, timing the market correctly, making sure that you're sending the right card to the right grading company, because I do believe, depending on the card, you need to choose the correct grading company, and also what your plan is for that card. If you're just grading the holder or grade it to PC, that's a completely different conversation than if you're looking to grade something and take it to the national and flip it. That is another completely different conversation. If you're just grading it for PC, you might like SGC or CSG for your PC stuff that you're going to hold, and you're never looking to resell it. It's going to be your kid's problem to resell 50 years from now. That's a completely different conversation than I want to grade this Joe Burrow whatever and take it to the national to sell in 6 months. You're probably going to want to go with PSA or BGS, most likely PSA, depending on the card and the value and all that stuff. Once again, as we've always said on the channel, grading is a math equation. Do the math. But I do feel like Rotigrade comes back in a stronger way. It's been more limited this past year. Not saying that it wasn't viable this past year, but it was a lot trickier. And as grading prices get cheaper, that frees up a little bit more margin, a little bit more room to work. And that money, I think we talked about this on my end of the year live stream when I had all the different guests on. We talked about how that kind of turnover of inventory really, I think, drives the market to a degree. If I spend $10 on a raw card, let's just call it $20 to grade it. I'm into the card for $30. I get it back, and let's say I sell it for $100. Not the biggest flip in the world, but now I'm up $60, $70. And what most people are going to do is they're going to take that $60 or $70 in profit and put that back into the marketplace. Rinse and repeat that over and over again at scale across a lot of different cards. And while do I think that's going to drive things back up to February 21 prices? No, that was a unicorn. We're never going to see that stuff again on most cards. But I do think it helps keep money moving in and out of the marketplace and will help stabilize card values. And then certain things will spike up depending on, breakout stars and the whole 9 yards that normally affects it. So I think Rotigrade comes back in a pretty big way. And I think that's a key component that has been missing for the last year for most people. Once again, it has been out there, and it is a viable tool. It has been, but I think that becomes much more of a viable play moving into 2022, because a lot of people, whether you agree with them or not, will only grade with certain companies. A lot of people will only send their stuff to PSA, and they haven't been moving that inventory through SGC. Some of the stuff has been moving through SGC. So it is what it is, but I do think that comes back in a big way. I also think another big prediction for this year, I think Fanatics comes into play this year to some degree. I've said this multiple times. I feel like we have Fanatics something. Obviously, it's not going to be Fanatics branded cards, but I believe Fanatics, they'll call it something differently, whatever the new company ends up being. But we will have a Fanatics release of some sort of trading card. Now, it might be celebrity. It might not be sports cards. It might be in conjunction with one of the existing companies. I also think we have a lot more clarity by the end of this year of what the Fanatics future is going to look like. I think once we get past the first of the year, we are going to start seeing mergers and acquisitions in regards to who they're going after, whether it's Topps, Panini, Upper Deck, whatever one that they choose, or maybe they choose multiples, or maybe they license the brands from them. We'll see. I think in the grand scheme of things, Topps makes the most sense for them to buy. So if I had to make a prediction on which company they actually purchase, I'm going to say Topps. Do I think the Panini brands then disappear? No. I think what actually happens is that they end up purchasing Topps, and then they license or maybe purchase the licensing rights for the names that we care about. Your Prisms, your Don Russ, your Optic, your National Treasures, your Flawless. Because I think Panini can continue to exist as a company and just go back to being a European sticker company, which is, what they are. But they can retreat back to that ground, kind of restructure the company. Maybe they sell off Panini America and some of the names that go along with it. But ultimately, I think Fanatics ends up getting most of the names that we care about between Topps and Panini. I think that will be by actually purchasing Topps and then trying to work some sort of deal to get the names from Panini. Upper Deck's kind of the wild card in this situation. I think they would need to buy them outright, and I don't know that they want to go that crazy and buy them all. Maybe they just let Upper Deck sit for a while and do their thing, and then sweep back in later. Upper Deck just re-upped their hockey license. Upper Deck has the Marvel license. Topps has Star Wars. And and they have a few other different things, but Hockey and Marvel are two of Upper Deck's biggest assets that they have going for them. So I think they might let Upper Deck sit. I think Topps is the purchase play, and I think the Panini brands are a play for them as well. And I think they want to get into the hobby as quickly as possible. My biggest fear is that they don't, because I see Topps and Panini continuing to print things into the ground as this year moves on. It is in their best interest as a business to milk this thing for all that it is worth before they are kicked to the curb. So that is my biggest concern for the hobby moving into 2022 and the sports card market in general, is the fact that they could continue to just print to the moon and no one's going to stop them. And that could overall hurt the hobby a lot. My other big concern too is how off cycle we are right now. It's the beginning of 2022. I still don't have NBA product with players in their actual jerseys. Now that's going to change this week. NBA Hoops drops on Friday, and that will finally give us some cards in there, or players in their current NBA uniforms. But we're 3 months into the season, and we're just now getting that. The season starts around Halloween. We've moved all the way through November and December, and we're now in the January, and we're now just getting our first Evan Mobley rookie cards and Cavs jerseys. That's a problem. The NFL playoffs are about to start, and we don't even have Mac Jones Prism cards yet. Like, we're still working through the base Don Russ. That's a problem, in my opinion. So I think that stuff needs to get cleaned up. That's definitely a big concern for me as well, because I think the hunt for the hottest rookie that everyone's talking about on SportsCenter and social media is important for the general zeitgeist of the general card market. In regards to the next thing to pop off, my big prediction here, and we've kind of talked about this on the last couple live streams as well, I think, and you're already seeing it, a lot of people are starting to talk about it, not just in my circle, but on a lot bigger circles. I think the celebrity / pop culture stuff continues to gain steam. Now, the tricky part is guesswork on which one is the ones that are going to take off. But you're seeing a lot of chit chat in that neck of the woods around the Leaf Pop Century release. And some other big celebrity cards have done quite well recently to kind of close out this year. Luber's talking about it in regards to stuff that he would like to see Fanatics do entering that marketplace. Flipping Steve's big into that market. Card Talk Pods talked about it. You're just seeing more and more buzz about the celebrity and pop culture icon side of things. And that can mean a lot of different stuff, whether it's political people, whether it's actors and actresses, whether it's musicians. I lump that stuff all together personally. But I think that market has a lot of room to potentially grow. And I could see a lot of people jumping and throwing money into that, thinking it's going to be the next big thing to go off. Going hand in hand with that, let's go ahead and pop over to some Marvel / comic book predictions. Before we do, in the comments down below, let me know what's your couple big predictions for this upcoming year in regards to the collectibles hobby in general. So leave those in the comments down below, whether it's sports cards, comics, pop culture, whatever it is. On the Marvel side of things, it's been the year of the Marvel card. 2021 was. I think that continues. I think Marvel cards continue to do extremely well. The tricky part here, though, is guessing which ones are going to be the next ones to take off. Obviously, the PMG market has been insane, carried by the Jambalaya market and some of the other markets. Some of the 90 Marvel Universe stuff continues to sell for strong prices. Some of the other more rare parallels continue to do well. But PMGs are definitely leading the charge. They're the ones getting all the hype and the buzz. I do think at some point in time this year, that will slow down. And the Eye of Sauron will focus its gaze on other products in the Marvel card marketplace. But there are so many options out there, it's hard to guess which one it's going to be. And you see people speccing hard right now, looking for out-of-the-box stuff to kind of latch onto next to try to be ahead of the curve, and it's driving a lot of spec prices on that stuff. I've talked about this a lot recently. These Marvel PMG sales, they're really strong, they're really good. I completely get them. But what happens when the first one sells that's lower than the one previous in a high profile place? Does that cause some sort of panic? And then people put more and more on the inventory to try to get their money out of them before it collapses. And I don't think PMGs are kind of unique in regards to the collapse because they are so limited, especially if you're just talking 2013 and 2015. They're all numbered. They don't come easily in high grade. So that part will give them an extremely high floor, but I can see a little bit of a pullback in PMG some point in time this year. But overall, I think the hype for Marvel cards continues throughout 2022. Maybe not reaching as crazy as it did in 2021, but I think Marvel cards are stronger now than they've ever been, and I think that ball continues to roll forward. Comic book wise, the comic book market has kind of moved in tandem with the sports card market to some degrees, just a few months behind schedule. So the sports card market had its peak in January, February. The comic book market had its peak in spring. Most stuff peaked in like April and May. Now, since then, a lot of that stuff has pulled way back, just like we saw in the card market. However, the comic book market has been more stable lately. The past few months, basically since late fall, has really kind of seen a lot of stuff level out from its all-time highs in the spring and kind of establish itself at new floors. A big reason I think behind that, and I've harped on this point a ton, is the fact that the census counts are so much lower. There's just not as much stuff out there on a lot of these key blue chip books compared to sports cards. And I've made this comparison a ton before as well. If you want the first appearance of a player, or a comic book character, there is only one real option for that. It's whatever that book is. It's not like sports cards where there's 1,600 different variations / sets / this, that, the other thing, purple disco swirly balls. You don't have that on the comic book side of things. So the census counts are way lower, which just gives everything a much safer floor. You're also not concerned about performance, a little bit maybe with movie spec stuff, but I'm talking more about blue chip key books, not movie spec stuff. So I think that stuff continues to do very well. I know myself personally, I've put a lot of money into that marketplace the last 2 months, just because I feel it's very safe, and I'm just looking at some more long-term assets versus short-term flips. So I think the comic book market will maintain and begin to tick back up again in blue chip keys. Given the census counts, it just does not take many people coming into that market to swing it. And I think as people hunt for the next thing, it could circle back around to comic books as the MCU continues to just crank out content left and right. So I'm very bullish on comic books in general moving into 2022 and the long-term prognosis for that market. So that's where I'm going to continue to put a lot of my long-term cash into. But for me, that is a lot of people say, hey, why don't you buy vintage sports cards? Comic books to me are vintage sports cards. They're very, very similar to each other in regards to how they hold up, grading, how lower grades hold a lot of value, low census counts, all that stuff. So for me, comic books are my vintage sports cards. Those are the things. That's my place to go for safety and security. And a lot of people, for them, it's, Hank Aaron cards and stuff like that, which is perfectly viable. You do you. If you want to go out there and chase Willie Mays stuff, more power to you. I'll be over here buying Black Panther. So that's pretty much what I got for you guys and girls today. I don't think there's anything too spicy in there, but once again, curious for your thoughts and predictions in the comments down below for this upcoming year. I think this is a much more normal year as opposed to last year. It's a low bar to clear because last year was so wild, especially at the beginning of the year. But I think in the card and collectibles market in general, the three major ones that I focus on, I think things get back to more semi-normal. And I think that's good. We had the wild and crazy times. A lot of new people came in. Some of those people have left. A lot of people have stayed. I do believe in the overall strength of all three markets, sports cards, Marvel cards, or non-sports cards, and comic books in general going forward. And I'm still very bullish on sports cards long-term, especially with Fanatics coming. Now, maybe they screw it up. I don't know. But at this point in time, I am willing to take the devil I don't know rather than the devil I do with just what I've seen Panini and Topps do with printing the last couple years. So we'll see what happens. It'll be a wild ride. I'll be here to cover it. We'll be here to talk about it. It'll be fun stuff. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't. Come along for this roller coaster ride of 2022. And we will catch you guys and girls on the next one. Peace.